Welcome back to Bass Capital Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Lara, and today I'm here with the legendary Steve Overturf. When we were practicing this, I did that, and he gave me the exact same look, so I couldn't start this podcast off without saying, "You are a legend in our community." Everybody knows Steve.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. Steve, if you haven't had the opportunity, because you are a busy man, and we'll get into why soon. But if you haven't had the opportunity to watch the podcast, it's like a rule that in order to move forward, we got to know how you ended up in Putnam County.
Well, when I was about 4 months old, my dad got an opportunity to come to work at St. Johns River Junior College, which it was called back then. The college had just gotten started, and they had just started the campus out here where it's located now. And he got the opportunity to come to Putnam County, and so I've been a lifelong resident of Palatka, and interesting story. My mom, when they first came to Palatka to check things out before they moved from Stark, which is where they were living.
So not too far.
Yeah, not too far away, and they were both from Nashville, Tennessee. So Stark was quite a drop down from that, and then so they came over to Palatka to look at things before they moved over here. And Mom came across the bridge and smelled the paper mill, and she looked at my dad, and this is how she said, "I'm staying here no more than 2 years in this stinky little town." And here we are 65 years later.
Right.
And so
Ingrained in the community at that.
absolutely, absolutely. So
That's funny. I saw this weekend somebody was talking about the smell of the paper mill. And it always, my favorite comment is always, that's the smell of money. But, it took me years to notice it, because you got to leave and come back. But I think with their new equipment that has
oh, it's
subsided.
yeah,
So
it's well, it's it's
if,
been cleaned up a
yeah,
lot, and it did used to be. I mean, you just hold your nose half a mile both sides of the Rice Creek Bridge, and
yeah,
but like you said, that was bread and butter, and
it's done a
people
lot of good for this community.
absolutely, it's the lifeblood of this community and has
Absolutely.
been. So, but
So, the smell of money.
yeah,
Again, though, it's not like it used to be, thankfully.
no,
But
no,
so you guys came over to Putnam County. You were a young thing, so you
yep,
grew up in the school system. Then here, tell me
absolutely.
some of your favorite memories of growing up in Putnam County.
Well, I went to Mosley Elementary, where the Bill Thomas Center is right now. That was where the school was then, and um, fond remembrances growing up there, and got to be a school crossing guard.
Oh,
So that was quite an honor to be able to have a badge that went across you and hold that sign out and stop the traffic. And so
great power and great responsibility.
well, you got picked by your teachers would recommend responsible people that she saw in the classroom, and so I felt that an honor to
Mm-hmm.
get called to ask to be a part of the crossing guards, and so
Love it.
great memories there. And I was telling my kids not long ago that I lived up right on Mosley Avenue. I walked to elementary school because it was 3 blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
I went to junior high, which it was called then, which is where um, the Mosley Elementary is now, which is just a block down the street.
Right.
So I walked to there. Then I went to high school at Palatka South High School, walked to there till I got 16 and could drive. So
Wow.
to be able to live right in the middle of town
Yeah.
and walk to school all the way to high school, that's how safe and enjoyable it was to grow up in this community right here.
I love hearing those stories. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody about the feeling that I get because I have a very vivid imagination. So when anybody's in the chair telling me their story, like I'm there, I'm with it. I was looking at little Steve walking to school just now in my mind. But we're gonna pause 1 second. I did not know that the weed eater guys were here. So I've talked to a lot of people about their time living and being able to like walk to different places, playing downtown. A lot of the kids or a lot of people talked about when they were kids being on Main Street and just walking everywhere, going in and out of the shops, and being able to walk with their friends, or the street light would be how they knew when to come home. I'm sure that must have been an incredible experience.
Well, it was, and we knew there were certain places that we didn't go, but I can remember riding my bicycle all over this whole area of town, and
Hmm.
never fearing anything, and just a great community to grow up in, and everybody took care of everybody, and lots of my friends from school lived out in the Rolling Hills area, which was a new community that got built over the years, and so it was just a great place to grow up and to live, and we're going through changes now, but you always remember those times. And when I hear classmates of mine come back to class reunions and they say, we couldn't wait to get out of Palaca when we graduated, and now I can't wait to retire because I want to come back to
I
Palaca.
love that.
And I say, well, that's good, but understand that it's not exactly the same when you left here in 1977.
Hmm.
Welcome back, but things have changed.
Hmm.
Still good atmosphere, but what a great place to be.
Right.
Um,
I think that all of the communities really have changed in the sense of, I grew up, fortunately for me, like I didn't have a cell phone. I'm aging myself. I've done that plenty of times in the podcast. I don't know why I'm worried about that, but I grew up where I didn't have a cell phone till I was well past graduation. If there were cell phones and you had one, it was not the one you put in your purse. It was a clunky brick one that, like, I remember my grandma having one in the phone. It was about the width of this chair. And hello. So it wasn't like we were all connected. So we did. I remember growing up, and I grew up in South Putnam, near San Mateo area, Satsuma, and walking to the store and renting VHSs, and all the kids would run around the neighborhood. But now, just in this world in general, being able to walk around, there's so many safety issues that people are concerned about, and I think we've been made more aware of the dangers, trafficking, and it's just, while it's not how it was, I am so glad to see the comeback of downtown as we are starting to fill in these empty buildings again, and the proposed plans that are for downtown. Um, but it's definitely, I hear this a lot. It comparatively, it's just not how it was. But I think we can all work together to make changes to make it better. So I'm very excited about the growth in Putnam County. And I hope that there'll be a day that we'll see kids running all around downtown and having a good time. But you said you went to Palaca South, correct?
correct.
Okay. And when you were in school in Palaca South, what did you see yourself doing in the future?
Well, I had no idea that I would end up in the funeral business. My brother Charles, who's 4 years older than I am, had worked at the funeral home with Edgar Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a little interest in it, so between my junior and senior year in high school that summer, I did work at the funeral home, and um, enjoyed my time there and getting introduced to what it was all about. Never thought anything more about it. Went on to St. John's, graduated from St. John's, went on to Flagler College in St. Augustine, got my BA degree in business, and was in the life insurance business for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Had aspirations to possibly open my own insurance agency one day,
Okay.
but an opportunity came along. My brother Charles had graduated, and he was working back full time with Edgar Johnson, and Edgar didn't have family that was in the business, and so we had an opportunity to consider possibly purchasing the funeral home. So I went back to mortuary school, and then came back to work for Edgar. And a
Mm-hmm.
year and a half later is when we actually were able to acquire the funeral home in November of 1985.
So
So,
Johnson-Overturf. It was first Johnson from Edgar Johnson, and then we threw in the Overturf.
right. Well, and we are the third family since 1901. Our funeral home got started by Carl Davis in
Mm.
1901. He was a very young man working at the furniture store.
Okay.
And back then, that's where the caskets were made. Wooden caskets were made at the furniture stores.
Oh, that makes sense.
And
Go pick out a sofa and a casket all
uh,
at the same
and
time.
he and he got interested in starting a funeral home. And the man that he was working with, Mr. T.S. Mooney, helped him start a funeral home. And so from 1901, Mr. Davis started the funeral home, and then his son took over when he passed, and his son died at age 42 of a sudden
Mm.
heart attack. Well, Edgar Johnson was a young man in his mid 20s, and so when John Barry Davis, Mr. Davis's son, died suddenly, it was not long after that before Edgar Johnson was able to acquire the funeral home, and then he had it for 30 something years before we got it from him. So we're proud that we've been able to carry on a family tradition since
Yeah.
1901,
Wow.
and we're, I guess, one of the rewarding things to us and to me about what I do is the fact that we're burying in multiple generations within families.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I can hear names from the past, not because I was there, but because I've seen records. We've got records going back into the 40s that I can pull up, that we've scanned in, and I can see, wow, this is the fourth generation in this family who we're serving right now. And
That's
and
just
I can know
incredible.
history about families. Had an interesting phone call not long ago from a young lady who, her father had died years ago. I actually went to high school with him and sat right behind him in high school. Her parents had divorced years back, and so she was rather young when her father died. And she said, I can't remember. I think I came to the services, but I don't know where he's buried. Can you tell me? And I told her the cemetery that he's buried in. She said, did you know my father? And I said, actually, I knew your father very well because he sat in front of me in class. And she's like, you knew my father? Can you tell me about
Oh.
him? Because of the
Oh.
situation that she had been in with her
Right.
parents, she didn't hear a lot from her mother about him. And I said, so I started talking about her, and I said, well, not only can I tell you about that, but you had a wonderful set of grandparents too. And I told her about her grandparents. And I said, I can even tell you about your great grandparents because
Oh.
I buried them too and I knew them. And she said, I've learned more from you in 15 or 20
Mm.
minutes talking on the telephone than I've ever heard from even my own family.
Oh my
And this is, I
goodness.
said, so, well, she lived out of state. I said, well, if you come here, call me and we'll be glad to go to the cemetery and I'll show you right where all of your family is and point out the ones that I'm talking to you about. That's the kind of neat thing that
Oh.
why I enjoy what I do, because I get to meet people and you develop relationships, and that's really what it's all about. And so that's just one example of the enjoyment that I have, not because people are losing family members, but because I get to meet people that I might not ever come across in life.
Right.
Meet
Right.
some wonderful people that you're with them in the hardest days of their life,
Mhm.
and you treat them right. You've probably made a friend for life, and that's the rewarding part of what we do.
Well, so just so our viewers know, Johnson-Overturf Funeral Home is over on, and I have lived here my whole life. That street is
Palm Avenue.
Palm, right? Okay, so
Hmm.
Palm on Palm Avenue, almost smack dab in the middle of the block,
It
right
is.
there,
It
by
is.
the
Yep.
old bread store. If you ever remember that, right across from the Putnam Academy of
Well, I
Arts and
used to
Science.
tell people, they used to ask, well, now where are you located? I used to could say we were catty corner from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Everybody knew that.
Kentucky Fried Chicken was where Larry's Giant Subs is now,
Right,
and
right.
everybody knew where Kentucky Fried Chicken was. So,
And what was it, the old drive-in theater near there?
well, and the drive-in theater was right behind that,
Yeah.
which is now that was the Linda Drive-In,
Yep.
and now it's Oak Hill West Cemetery.
Oh, Steve,
So,
I'm so glad. I forgot about the drive-in. Oh my gosh. When do you know when that drive-in stopped being a drive-in?
the cemetery I think got started over there on that side of the road in the early '90s.
Gosh,
So it had been vacant for a few years,
man,
prior
what
to
I would
that.
give
But
to have a good drive-in again.
well, the unique story. Not too long ago, we were serving a family, and the lady told me that her mom was used to be the manager of the Linda Drive-In Theater,
Hmm.
and I said, "Oh, really?" And and so we got to talking, and I said, "Well, you knew what used to happen, right? Where everybody would pile in the trunks of cars so they didn't have to pay the fee to get in.
That is
And then they would all
hilarious.
pile out after they got out there." She said, "Well, of course we knew that because there was more people coming to the concession stand than there was people that paid to get in." but
Hey,
we,
they were still
but
patroning.
yeah, but we made more money off the concession stand than we did the gates, so we didn't
Right.
care,
Right.
And I
I
thought,
love
well, that
that.
was neat, but
I wouldn't have even, that didn't cross my mind when I
yeah,
thought about that. That's
yeah.
funny. Man, I can't even, I think I saw My Girl there. And I remember being terrified of bees after that because the young boy got stung by a bee. And I can't remember the storyline. Somebody out there is like, got knows the storyline way better. But anyway, I remember watching that in the drive-in. Or maybe I just imagined that. I'll have to go fact check. So the Linda Drive-In is what it was called?
Linda Drive-In, yep,
Linda Drive-In.
yep.
Okay. So back, sorry, funeral, that was a squirrel for a moment. So with the funeral home industry, I mean, that is incredible for over 100. I mean, that's 123 years, you know, of families, and really, to your point, serving them in the hardest time of their lives. Uh, but yeah, fun fact, my husband Dylan, who is the wonderful editor of these videos, had the opportunity to work with you, and the way that I had a whole new perspective on not just the funeral home industry, but a passing of a loved one in general through what you guys did was, it just changed my whole mindset about it. Um, and the way that you would always take care of those families. And I'm not, I haven't had a lot of experience in the funeral home industry, but it seems that, Steve, you guys really take that extra care to be a soft space for the people that are coming to you. Um, and the fact that you would be willing to take that young lady out to see her family, that's just amazing. That
Well, we've always, as our family has always said, we try to treat people the same way that we would want to be treated if it
right.
were us in the other seat, because one day it will be. And so when you put yourself in their position and you want to know that this is somebody that I can trust, this is somebody that I know cares.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we consider it's a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a calling to yes, it's some long hard hours, as Dylan can attest.
Yep.
That phone rings at 2 in the morning. Someone's passed at home. Then you've got to get up and you've got to go. And so it can be some long, difficult days, but it's all worth it because of the people that you meet. When you're able to serve a family and you're able to serve them well, um, that's the rewarding part because they deeply appreciate it. Um, you've met people that you might not otherwise have met, but then there are other times when it is difficult because it is people that we know.
Mm.
I've buried classmates, I've buried teachers from school. Some of my fondest memories are elementary school days
Mm-hmm.
and the wonderful teachers that had an impact on my life. And then to serve, I would have never dreamed sitting in first grade or third grade class or any of
Right.
those
Yeah.
classes all these years later that I would be honored to be serving as the one bearing and having services for my teachers
Right.
who impacted my life. And um, that's kind of a unique experience, but it's also one that really makes you understand life is moving on. When very, very few of any of my teachers are still around, and tells me my age too. And now, because of the age that I am, it is my age category of people and people that I went to school with that are I'm sitting across the desk from now, making arrangements for their parents too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm understanding that this is difficult on them, and it hurts because I know they're having to go through things that I'm very fortunate that both of my parents are still living and thriving, and I know they're going through difficult times, serving people that I went to school with. So, but I feel it an honor to be asked to serve. So,
Yeah.
um,
Now, for those who don't know, because I think until I had until my husband, until Dylan was working in the funeral home industry, I never once really thought about the fact that you guys are like Batman, like just there and then gone, So at 2 a.m., if the phone rings, to your point, you got to go. And let's say the phone rings at 2 a.m. and then you go serve that family, and then the phone rings at 4 a.m. Somebody's got to serve that family. And, it's not, I don't think to my remembrance, there are not a lot of people chomping at the bit to hop into the funeral home industry.
well,
Um,
it's very demanding.
mhm.
It's something that if they're going to make a career of it, and you're going to have a family, you've got to have a real understanding with your spouse and with your kids. And
Mhm.
look, this is a ministry,
Mhm.
and there's going to be times when things happen at very inconvenient times. It can happen Christmas Day, New Year's Day. It can happen
Father's
on
Day.
birthdays when
Yep.
we're celebrating things. That phone rings, my ministry starts.
Yeah.
And so, there's been times when family outings and things have to be cut short or put on hold,
Turning
or
around. I
or
remember
or
turning around going to
that's
St.
right,
Augustine.
or come back home from vacations because I'm needed back here because something tragic has happened in somebody very close's family, and that's just part of what we do.
And
And you go
so,
into it understanding that because this is the most difficult day in somebody's life.
right.
And so, if that's not what you're willing to do, then chances are that you're not going to be real successful at it
Right.
because people are going to say, well, are you really putting your family before my family?
Right.
Well,
People in their greatest time of grief are not really thinking logically all the time, and sometimes, you know, uh, and I've put a warning on this video for anybody who just, this it can be a sensitive subject. But death and taxes, we know those are coming, right? The sure things in life. But there are people who plan out, and that's something I do want you to share with us how you can be prepared for that. But people who are planning and prepared, they've got all of their documents in place, they've purchased what they need to purchase, they've said their goodbyes, and so the passing of a loved one could be very, you know, a very positive and peaceful circumstance. And then there are some not so prepared moments, where, or maybe it was a prolonged and painful situation. So I think that having those all over the spectrum, while you may have some people who are ready for this, and this is something more of a celebration, there are times that you have families who are, like you said, going through the hardest day of their life, and death does not discriminate in age, or
that
gender or race.
it absolutely does not. And yes, there are a lot of folks who are taking advantage of the opportunities to come in and pre-plan their services.
Hmm.
Um,
What does that look like?
well, so we sit down and we talk about things just as if they were going to happen tomorrow.
Hmm.
All the details about whether they're going to be buried or cremated or what they would want their service to look like, if they're even going to have a service. So you're thinking about all the details, but you're doing in a non-emotional time.
Right.
And then so not only does it let a husband and wife sit down together instead of one of them doing it alone,
Mhm.
but it also lets you have opportunity to discuss with your kids and your family, this is what we're planning, to make sure that they're comfortable with what you're planning. Because sometimes they make decisions that they think, well, we just want to keep it simple and take the burden off of our kids. But if you don't discuss this with your kids and the kids find this out when that day does come and they
Mhm.
come in and find out, so mom and dad have already come in and done this? Yeah, years ago.
Mhm.
Well, we're not comfortable with that. Or now I'm torn between following through with what their wishes were or doing what we need, because we're the ones left to cope with
For
this.
closure,
So
yeah.
that's why I always try to advise folks that, look, I'm welcome to sit down and talk with you, but I want you to really consider discussing all this with your family before we finalize things, so
Right.
that this is not creating an undue burden on them, because you're doing a caring thing, but make sure that they're understanding of what it is that you really want and their reasoning on why.
Right.
Then the other aspect of it is many want to go ahead and prepay
Mhm.
on these arrangements so that it can lock them in on today's prices rather than years down the road. But it also lets you make financial decisions in a non-emotional time,
Right.
which that's good for everybody.
Absolutely.
So, and then it takes the burden off of the kids,
Mhm.
to know that, look, my parents didn't just come in and talk about what they wanted, they pre-funded it also.
Right.
So that's a caring thing to do for your family members, and it takes a big burden off of them, and so a lot of people are taking advantage of that because we don't know, as we've seen here just recently with tragic situations that
Mhm.
happen with young people, that catches everybody by surprise, and how difficult those are. But um, we're getting folks that are not, 70s and 80s that are coming in doing this. We're talking people in their 50s and 60s, probably are the more people nowadays that are coming in and talking about prearrangements because they see the
Yeah.
advantage of, or they've dealt with it because they've had to do it
Exactly.
with with their parents, and they don't want their kids to have to go through it. So they're coming at a younger ages now because it just makes sense. So and it falls right in line when you've got, estate planners and all that are very active in our community, that are very
Mhm.
close to where we're sitting, um, that are advising folks. Part of your overall end of life planning, not just your estate and your living will and all these things, but folks, you need to come in and talk about, what you want funeral wise,
Right.
or what you don't want. So this is just a part of the estate planning process. So, having them encourage people to do it too, just kind of helps promote that general idea. So,
Right.
um,
I think the gift of doing that for someone is so incredible because it really does give them the opportunity to process and to, maybe people are in a financial situation where they can't pay for that ahead of time. Then that's left to the child to figure out how to deal with that. But if you plan ahead, you're able to give your family the space to work through your passing. And then again, having those plans early on, I as you were talking about it, I thought, should I go in there and I go ahead and make those arrangements? Because, while I'm, young, comparatively, you don't know when something could happen. And I appreciate you mentioning, the financial planners and estate planners who are able to help you, put together all of those documents. And especially when you have kids. Yeah, I think it's super important to now you have to be considerate of another human that is relying on you or impacted by that. So I think when that time comes as a family, that's a great time to let's go ahead and at least get this conversation
Mhm.
started. So if they wanted to do that, they would come see you, which leads me to the next question. Uh, in a funeral home, it's not, I can't fathom it just being Steve in there taking care of everything, you know. So there, what different roles are there in a funeral home?
Well, I'm supported by a great staff, and so I've got two other full-time funeral directors, and Eric Altman has been with me for over 30 years now.
Wow.
Um, and you know, I attribute that to us creating a good working environment. We're like family. We spend so many hours together, both during the day and at night, getting
Hmm.
called out. So it's like a big family. And when you've got a great staff that works with you, you know you've got to have folks who are strong enough, able enough to go out, you know, on these calls when folks pass, and there's lifting involved, and you know there's a lot of long hard hours, and
Physically and emotionally as
Dylan
well.
can attest to that. You
Hmm.
know, it's physically and emotionally draining on you at times, um, but to have a great staff with you, you know, got others that have been with me for 18 years or more.
Wow.
You know, my brother Charles was with me as a partner in the business for over 30 years, and uh, then he went into politics, and so been doing it by myself there. But you know, I get him in occasionally on the weekends, and he helps us out, and he's still a partner there with me. So, but it's great to have, you know, staff that can do things. Um, in the office, Cheryl is a great Cheryl Meeks.
Hmm.
She got her license to be a funeral director as well as while she was working as our office manager. Been a great addition to things. I'm pleased to announce that my son Ryan, my oldest son, is now a part of the business with me.
Oh, awesome. That's
So he just
amazing.
started back in January, and so
Carrying
I'm
on for future
well,
generations.
and that's exciting, you know, to know that you know I've got family that'll be following in footsteps, and
Love that.
being the face of things down the road. So um, you know, our involvement in the community is something that has been a vital part of our business too. It's not just that we're in business, but we're a part of the community.
I
And
feel like it builds a trust, you know, your people, whether we like it or not, funeral home is a business, you know, it's run like a business, and there are other funeral home services, and everybody has their own uniquenesses, and there's plenty of us, there's going to be plenty of work, you know. But when somebody is choosing what funeral home, they're going to need somebody that they can have a rapport with and trust. And so you guys being out in the community is so critical to for people to have that opportunity to, oh yes, I remember Mr. Steve Overturf. You know, he served you know, various functions to support the community, you know, that you're serving them in other ways than just that hard moment. And Steve, you're everywhere. Like, I don't know how you do it, honestly.
well,
I'm surprised you're right here right now, if I'm going to be honest.
well, so when someone is choosing a funeral home, it is most times because they know who you are and they trust you.
Hmm.
But there's many times when, as we're going to be seeing here in the coming years, when there are going to be people that move here from other places that don't know who you are, don't know what you've done in the community. So they're going to ask for a referral from maybe a neighbor or from a pastor, or it might be a hospital worker or somebody that you know just happens to be there in front of them at a difficult moment. And so that's that opportunity when you're active in the community that look, maybe these people don't know who to call because they're not familiar, that they're going to ask somebody else. And maybe I've had opportunity to be in front of those people,
Right.
or sometimes it's just because they've been to another service that we've handled, and maybe we've done something that impressed them, or we've just been in front of them, or
Right.
you were just the ones that I happened to pick up the book and back
Right.
the phone book, if you can
That
believe
one.
that.
Yeah.
Had people tell me that, so whatever way that it is, it's our greatest honor to be asked to serve a family when that time comes. And yes, we're all over the community, but that's what we do. We're not just in business; we're a part of the community,
Right.
and there's no greater honor than for me to be active in a club or an organization and know I'm building relationships with people, because one day they're going to need somebody in the funeral business's services.
Right.
I'd love to be that person, to be able to, because I have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
relaxes people when they know I already know you, or maybe I don't know you really well, but I know of you,
Familiar
and that's
face.
why I want you to serve my family.
Absolutely.
So, that's what makes it a unique relationship, is then we can build on what we do know, because I find out things about people that I've known for many years. And at the funeral, I'm sitting there, I'm hearing things that I've never known about this individual. And I've known him for 25 or 30 years. And now I'm finding out unique things about this person. That's the neat thing about what we do too. I never knew this guy used to love to do this.
Right.
This guy raced cars.
Right.
I'm like, this is crazy. I never knew that side of this person. So that's just another aspect of this business that we're in. We're in the people business
Right.
and relationships.
Now you have multiple locations, right?
Our main location is here in Palatka.
Mm-hmm.
When we bought the funeral home in 1985, it was still located downtown, right across from the courthouse there on 4th Street. But we had already acquired the property. It was a vacant lot where our building on Palm Avenue stands now. And so in February of 1987, we built our first little chapel out in Interlochen.
Okay.
That was an area that we wanted to get active in, and so we built that building and opened it in February of 1987, and then moved into our current building on Palm Avenue in September, Labor Day weekend of 1987.
Put the labor in Labor Day.
So we took on a mountain of debt, buying the business and building 2 buildings in the first year and a half.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that's
then in
intense for
2017, we
business.
were able to acquire the former Clayton Frank and Biggs Funeral Home down in Crescent City. So I've really enjoyed getting to know the folks in that community, some wonderful people down there.
Absolutely.
Great group of folks that are down there, some very influential folks, that paved the way for that community down there. And some very accomplished business people were in that community down there. And so us getting to reach out and be now on all ends of Putnam County just gives us an opportunity to meet more unique people. And we've enjoyed, being a part of this community for 65 years now. And so this is my 40th year in being a funeral director. And I can't imagine really doing anything else. It's been a very rewarding to be able to meet people and to develop friendships and relationships, and to be able to do it in different locations in the county, because Interlochen is different from Palatka, and Palatka is different from Crescent City.
Which is awesome that we have so much diversity.
It is,
and it's such a bit. Putnam County is a lot bigger than people realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's hours cross county. Really.
I'm burning up the roads right now, running back and forth between Palatka and Interlochen, and Palatka and Crescent City, and other parts around, because through our place in Crescent City, we're serving families in northern part of Volusia County too, and so we're not just right here in Palatka. It's all over this county as well as surrounding counties.
And I think people also don't realize, and you share things, just experiences, and I was sharing with somebody that Dylan at the time was like taking someone to the airport, someone who had passed, and the fact that like you've traveled all over the states, right? And so just because someone has passed here does not mean that that's where they're going to be buried. So what's the furthest you've traveled?
Well, we travel all over the South. Folks migrate here over the years from Alabama, Tennessee,
Hmm.
Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. We've been to all of those states, and uh, done services most of the time in coordination with other funeral homes in those communities.
Right.
But it's a great honor when somebody tells me, "Look, I want you to come to South Carolina, and I want you to do the whole service."
Oh,
The
wow.
person passed here, and we want. Yes, we could use somebody else up there, but we would rather it be you because we know you
Hmm.
and we trust you.
Right.
And there's no greater honor than that, to know that, look, yeah, it's going to be a long several days here, but
Hmm.
to know that somebody thinks enough of you to want you to see it all the way through to
Right.
the end. And
South Carolina, that's crazy to think that
yeah, I've been up there and 7 hours away, and
Johnson-Overturf does travel.
have hearse will travel, so,
Exactly.
but it gives me an opportunity. Some of my fondest memories are traveling with pastors
Mhm.
who I take with me,
Mhm.
because they too are in that same scenario
Right.
where this was their pastor here in Palatka, and they want that pastor to officiate their service, their graveside service up there too. And so I get opportunity to have communication for 6 and 7 hours, on a trip up there, and you know, fond memories of traveling with pastors, and being able to share, stories about both of our ministries, and um, unique things that happen on the way. So,
Yeah.
was it
Lots of good. You're building good memories while helping people. Truly, I mean, I guess the way you could look at it is building a positive memory, and a moment where they're saying goodbye to a loved one. It doesn't, people don't always think about it being a positive thing, but a beautiful service. I mean, I have been to, not near as, thankfully, knock on wood, not a lot of services. However, I know there will come a time where I will see that, but I always am impressed how beautiful those services can be, and the care that is taken to put those together. And you have Eric takes care of helping those who decide, because you can be cremated, obviously, or you can. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a natural burial.
Mhm.
Um, which is not something we have in Putnam County. Is that correct? Or
Well, it's called green burial.
green burial?
Some call it natural burial. That's where the body is not embalmed. The body is wrapped in a shroud and then put in a biodegradable type of container, like
Mhm.
a wicker casket. And then the body is buried straight in the ground with
Mhm.
no vault, and
Is it close to
there's no
north?
headstones. It's you carve either on a rock or a piece of wood or something the person's name, and so that's a green burial,
Mhm.
and the idea being that that body goes back to the dust in a much quicker way than a traditional way with a casket and a vault and all of
Mhm.
that. The closest one to here is over in Alachua County, and we travel over and do several a year over there. We're for folks that want
Mhm.
that type of burial for.
Yeah, that was something new to me, because I've, growing up, I always envisioned a casket, and I was my mind was blown. This was in my teen years when I realized they weren't shaped like Count Dracula's
Right. Yeah.
casket.
Well, those are coffins.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, a, a casket is a four-sided, a coffin has five sides to it. because
Okay. Well,
it comes
teach
to a
me
point.
everything because
Well, that's and so sometimes nowadays people are still calling it coffins, and I'm like, no, it's really not a coffin. That's got more sides to it
okay.
because it gets narrower at the front at the
So
head end
that
up there.
Dracula slept in a coffin.
That's right. That's right.
People are buried in
Yeah.
caskets
Yeah.
traditionally. Could you though get a coffin if that's how you wanted to?
Yes.
Because these are
And
pretty
I had that
customizable, right?
occasion not long ago. Um, this was someone that was Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and the casket, which is a coffin shape, um, and made all of wood, even has wooden dowels. There's no metal on the Jewish type of casket. So,
Oh.
but and the shape is different. So quite a unique situation there.
And now that we're talking about, you get to see all kinds of unique, like traditions and I'm sure people have their own like, oh, like how many times has I've heard somebody make a joke about when I die, you guys better play some kind of, uh, I'll be back song, whatever, some kind of crazy, you know, desire, talking about they want everybody to have a party, whatever it might be. But you really do get to carry out those wishes. So,
And we love it when people want to personalize something or
mm-hmm,
something unique about what they want,
mm-hmm,
because they do want it personalized. We want to describe who this person was in life.
right,
And so, we encourage folks that whatever you want to do, or help
right,
us help you plan that type of service, because we don't want it just generic 101 where
mm-hmm,
we get up and we just mention the person's name, right at the first of things, and then we just go into, a prepared sermon that
mm-hmm,
doesn't talk about the individual as much. Now, there's
mm-hmm,
nothing wrong with sharing spiritual messages and things, but we're here to talk about this person's life. And so the
right,
more that we can involve, who was this individual? And tell me some stories, or what qualities of this person's life can you tell us about that we can use in our own lives?
right,
And that's what makes a meaningful service to the people that come.
right,
And I just heard it just this past weekend where people said, I really and you understand why they're saying it. I really enjoyed this service. And you're like, you enjoyed a funeral service? Yes, because we celebrated that person's life. We didn't come here. Yes, we were saddened that the person is not with us, but we laughed and we cried,
mm-hmm,
and we rejoiced that we had the time that we did with this person,
right,
and we look forward to joining them again.
right,
And so when you can put all of those elements together in a service, you've got something that's been
right,
meaningful to people. And now it's not something that I dread going to. I want to go because there's some interesting people in this community
right,
that there's lots of material that you can talk about this person because
right,
they were characters.
right,
My predecessor, Edgar Johnson, was one of those kind of people, and
uh-huh,
his service was one that was talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks because he would his personality lent itself to just funny things that happen, crazy things that happen, and you knew if they got talking about this individual, it's going to be an enjoyable service.
right,
And
right,
and you recall things that happen in life and stories that are shared, and that's what they want to hear because
right.
that's what they experienced with them in life.
They're there to honor this person because they care about them.
That's right.
So, and you make that choice to attend. So, you obviously want to think about the best memories that you have of that person.
Absolutely.
I want to have snacks. When kids, if you're watching this, when I pass, I need snacks at my service because there's never a wrong time for snacks. I feel like sometimes, but I think that's cool that you could have those kind of things. Like, you're just a moment where it is remembering that person for who they were during their life, just from the music to the stories. And I think it's amazing that when you're there serving other people, that that is an opportunity for their loved ones to even dialogue with you about maybe a relative that that has been through there, because you guys will help, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with the plots, right? Help pick out,
Mhm.
so maybe mom, grandma, grandfather have been all buried there and you've had that part. People will come to you and see that you have knowledge on all those services that you've done, and being able to share in that same time when someone's passed. Oh, grandma's service was like this too.
Well, and you mentioned the cemetery plot. That's a very important part of the decision process about planning a service is for the folks that are going to be buried is, where are you going to be buried? And then we need to think a little bit about the future here,
Mm,
because if this is a parent that you're burying and the other parent's still alive, then obviously you want, if that parent is going to be buried too, you want them to have a space right next to them. But it's also a time for the children while they're right there.
mm-hmm,
Hey, do you anticipate being placed here in this cemetery near your parents? And if so, you might want to consider now's the time to buy other lots in the area here, just thinking the future, because
mm-hmm.
we don't know what the future holds.
Right.
And so, that's something that sometimes people they don't look that far in advance. And then something unexpectedly happens and there's no spaces near there because they only bought what was right needed at that
Mm,
time, which I understand. A lot of times it's financial constraints that don't lend themselves to buying multiple lots, but for the folks that have that ability, that's a great thing to be able to say, look, yeah, I think I might want to be right here with my parents, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So,
right.
just part of the planning process. So,
I think just in general, from my experience, death was always, I don't know, I mean, it is kind of a taboo topic. Some people don't like to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the future. Have had experiences in talking with one of my loved ones where they just didn't want to have that conversation. But I think it was a really unique experience for us as a family with Dylan being in the funeral home, that it has made it less scary for my children, because they understand, like, that's just part of everyday living. That's what he does every day. He goes and serves families whose loved ones have passed. So I think having this dialogue with your family makes it less overwhelming and less
well,
scary.
it's yeah, and you're right. There are many folks that don't want to talk about it because it's in their mind it's not a pleasant subject to talk about.
Right.
They just don't want to think about life without their loved one.
Hmm.
But when you think about it, we plan for every other event in life. We plan for births and graduations and anniversaries and retirements and
Hmm.
everything but the most sure thing that's going to happen in life.
Right. Right.
We
That's
don't want
fair.
to talk
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
want to talk about
I
that
didn't
one,
think about the most
but
sure thing
it
concept.
doesn't have to be that subject that you don't want to talk about for the very reason that we just got through talking about.
Mhm.
If you plan it as a celebration,
Mhm.
it shouldn't be that sad occasion to you.
Right.
I want you to talk about crazy things that we did in life or
Mhm.
the great times that we enjoyed on family vacations or hunting trips or whatever.
Mhm.
So yes, it may hurt to remember those times without this individual now,
Right.
but that's part of the grieving process is to talk about them and work through that. And
Right.
so if you plan these things in advance, or you as a husband and wife are talking about, from time to time, hey, this, what would I want when I pass?
Right.
Or I don't want you doing this. Okay. So I'm telling you now,
Right.
I don't want all of this. I may just want a simple cremation.
Right.
And I want I want my cremated remains to be scattered at the ocean or
Exactly.
some other body of water or maybe a favorite hunting spot, or some people want to be taken up in an airplane and, scattered over the mountains or something. Okay, so how are they going to know that unless you talk about it?
Right.
Um, you know, So to talk about the inevitable only makes sense.
Yep, absolutely.
Men typically don't want to talk about it. That's
Have you figured that out yet, Steve?
yes, because statistically, the male is going to predecease the female. Okay, so the male looks at it from the standpoint that, look, I'm not going to be the one left to handle all this, so I'll leave it up to her.
Right.
Okay, because I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
So she'll be left behind. She can make it up. Well,
Men, this is a comment for you guys. You got to get in there and talk about it. I know it's hard, but tell you ladies what you want.
so I've been asked for how do I generate this conversation with my parents?
Right.
My parents are getting elderly, and I know this day is going to come, but they don't want to talk about it, or I don't know how to approach this subject with them. Well, a great opportunity is when one of their friends passes. Okay, so they're going to go, if they're going to go to the service, or a neighbor has passed, or somebody close in their life has had this experience.
Right.
There's your open door.
Yeah.
There's your opportunity to say, I know you're grieving right now about, your neighbor that y'all have been neighbors for all these years, or your fellow church member, or
Right.
you've had a family member that's passed. Mom or dad, what would you want? Can you tell me?
Right.
Share that with me, because I want to do what you want done.
Right.
So there's your open door time to generate that conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because we see it all too often where it's not until one of them ends up in a nursing facility, and now you're having to make decisions in a hurry.
Right.
Because now one's going to be left alone, one's going to be in a nursing facility, and now you're having to make financial decisions also.
Right.
And
Not the
maybe
ideal time.
not the ideal time, because sometimes you've got financial situations that should have been taken care of years ago that are now having to be done at a time where you're at a disadvantage because of what you could have done had you not only done some pre-planning but estate planning and things. So all of that's just part of that natural progression of life. And so when that door opens to have those conversations with parents, or maybe it's not a parent, maybe it's somebody else, it's a neighbor. There's people in our community that don't have family, that somebody else outside of family is going to be left to make those decisions for, because they're the only ones looking after them.
Right.
And for that person to be able to make good decisions for that person, they need to be able to have conversation about,
exactly,
hey, what is it you want me to do with your belongings or your property? Or, if you're leaving money and assets, where would you want that to go to?
Right.
Is there a charity or an organization that you want this to be given to? Please tell me, because I want to do what you want done, because it's yours.
Yeah.
So
honoring it appropriately.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve, I think it is comforting to know, especially hearing that your son Ryan's going to be coming in and taking up the torch and taking care of our community as Johnson-Overturf, Johnson Funeral Home before that, and if it was Davis Funeral Home
It was
okay.
W. Carl Davis, and then it was Johnson Davis and Johnson-Overturf.
And whatever name it falls under, we know that you and your family continue to serve our community and have that history. Now I look forward how cool would it be for 200-year mark to hit? I mean, that's just right around the corner if you really think about it.
Well, it's kind of hard for me sometimes to conceive that I've been doing this for 40 years, and our family's owned the funeral home for 38 and a half years, coming up on 39 years. And she's like, where has time gone to? But then to know that you got family that's going to, be there and continue to serve the families in our community.
Right.
We feel it, a big shoes to fill, because Carl Davis started this all this many years before. And to carry on a generational type of scenario. I think that's what's challenging to us is look, we wanted to build on what others had put in place for us. And that's what we've tried to do as a family is build on the business that we assumed from two other families and do the best that we can to leave it, in a good condition for whoever's going to follow us. And,
Well, I think
you know,
I think you've done an amazing job of that.
well,
And we are thankful to have you serve this community. And you've given us a lot of great tips. Like, not only did we learn the history of the funeral home, but now we can all, as we watch this video, I know it's a hard conversation for some of us, but it's important a conversation to have. And so you've given us some tips on what to talk about, how to talk about it. And if they need to talk about it, they can always come see you. And
absolutely.
now you've met Steve in all his glory, who used to walk to school all over the place and had aspirations, did not necessarily imagine himself here, but the moment that the opportunity came up, you
Quick,
took it.
unique thing. I mentioned I was in the life insurance business,
Yes.
and I sold a policy. A gentleman took out a policy on his son. And I said, I want to be here as a life insurance agent to serve you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Little did I realize that about 35 years later, I would be serving that family, but as the funeral director
On the
on the
policy.
policy that I had written.
Wow. Talk about full circle,
I,
Steve.
and I'm like, now this is unique that I'm
Yeah.
I'm here servicing this family, but not as the life insurance agent that wrote that insurance
Yeah.
policy, but as the funeral director who's now serving that family. And now I'll be getting the claim forms and I will be acting in that capacity again
Wow.
with this family. And,
Right.
you know, I kept that policy because I thought this is quite a unique thing.
Oh, for
Never would
sure.
I have believed in 1981 when that policy was written that I would be on the other end of this. And
Right.
so I'm like, what a turn of events, But
That is pretty cool.
but
To,
nevertheless, still serving that family.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that you do for this community. And we will be sure to leave below a link to the website if they want to see what kind of services you offer. Again, I think that you guys make it just a very comfortable conversation. So have the heart conversation with your loved ones. A lot of our podcasts, we try to bring education. And while this one is a tough one, I think it's important to have the conversation. Um, and is there any words of wisdom from the great Steve Overturf that you would leave us with?
You, I just want folks to know we're here. Even if somebody has another funeral home or they're not sure about their choices, we're here to answer questions, provide information. That's what we do many times. Sometimes families just call and they're asking for information because they don't really know where to turn or they
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that they're making the right decisions. So whether it's our family serving them or another fine funeral home in our community, we just want to be there to help people and help them make that right decision for them and their families.
Or figure out a mystery. Before we were recording, he got a phone call with nothing to do with serving a family, but a mystery that was on their hands, and you jumped up to help this community member. So you really are an asset to Putnam County, and we just want to say thank you.
Well, we're just honored to be a part of this community for all these years and being able to serve not just at the funeral home, but in clubs and organizations in this community. This community has an abundance of 501c organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That's what to me makes people don't come here because of those organizations, but that is why I think they stay here when they see the love and compassion in the giving that this community does
Oh my
through
gosh,
those
yes.
organizations. And I enjoy doing what I do as a business by being able to serve in those organizations. And
Right.
that's what makes this that much more meaningful to me is that, look, I'm not just the guy that you see in those difficult days, but I'm out there in a barbecue or a fundraising event or something in our community that gives me pleasure to be able to serve in other capacities in this community. And the whole of what we do as a part of this community, not just as a business, but as individuals who are involved in this community.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And if you're interested in getting involved, go back and watch some of our videos. There's tons of ways for you to connect with one of the nonprofits. You can always reach out to us here at the Bass Capital Radio Podcast. Happy to help you find a way to plug in. Until the next episode, Steve, thank you for joining me and thank you for giving us a great education.
thank you for having me. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.